Make a note about timing. So we have this room until 3 o'clock, and we've got quite a lot of questions to get through. So if you could keep your answers quite brief when we're asking the questions. And if there's anything that you can't fit in, you can always follow up in writing after the hearing. Usually when we do these public hearings, we've got ministers in front of us, and our job is to hold the ministers to account. That's not the purpose of the hearing today. The purpose of this hearing is to gather evidence. So it's completely open for you to say your views to us, and we'll put that evidence into our report. So everybody's checked that their mobile phones are off. So I'm Deputy Louise Dublé, and I'm the chair of this sub-panel, and I'll let the rest of my panel introduce themselves.
Deputy Lucy Stevenson, a member of the panel.
Deputy Karen Wilson, member of the panel.
Deputy Christina Moore, a member of the panel.
And Louise, could you start with your introductions and then...
Lauren, yes.
Sorry, Lauren.
No, that's all right, don't worry. So I'm Lauren Maggs, I'm the Operational Manager at Brighter Futures.
I'm Margaret Bailey, I'm the Deputy Manager at Brighter Futures.
I'm Louise Perez, I'm a Senior Coordinator at Brighter Futures.
I'm Sarah Nibbs, I'm an Ambassador for Brighter Futures.
Great.
I'm Kerry Gogler, I'm a current client at Brighter Futures.
Welcome.
I'm Samantha Gogler. I'm a parent ambassador, but also a leaver of Brighter Futures.
Great.
My name is Marcel Bucor, and I'm the Fundraising Events and Partnership Manager. Right.
And I'm Judith Hanson, I was reading it then. Judith Hanson, Trust and Grants Manager at Brighter Futures.
Great, and welcome to you all. We've put some information up here so that we've got a mutual understanding of what your charity does. And I think that our panel has quite a good understanding of what your charity does. But is there anything that you'd like to add to that description of what your charity does, of what your core services are?
So I suppose the one thing, just to give you an update of where we are as a charity, so the charity supports 150 families at any one time, but currently we're supporting 163 families, which includes 4 dads, 26 perinatal journey, and also 22 of them which are high-level children in need and child protection level. Okay. So just to give you an update of where we are there.
Thank you.
As far as the charity, obviously we employ a number of staff. We've got 23 staff, but included in the 26 staff, but included in that is coordinators who give one-to-one support to the families. Okay. The coordinator role is split between 2 different things. So 50% is to the programmes that we offer, which is currently 25 programmes, all circling around parent and child relationships, well-being and positive mental health, and also second chance learning. Mm-hmm. Out of those programmes, obviously, the other 50%, of that of their job is the one-to-one coordinator support, which is where we work with a lot of outside agencies as well. So we're constantly signposting, because obviously we can't fix everything. And if there's other agencies which are out there that are actually giving support, then we know what support that is actually out there. A lot of the people that come through our door don't know what is out there. And that's where we come into our own. And we're constantly seeing with the feedback that we get from our families that actually that's really beneficial, that we can actually signpost. One, if their English isn't their first language, because we're a multilingual staff, but also if you've got anxiety and you really don't want to sort of stand in front of a total stranger and actually talk about, what help you're actually needing. And that's where our coordinators will stand alongside the families.
So your charity does an awful lot then. It sounds like you achieve a lot. And how do families and individuals actually find out about all the services that you offer?
So our main referrals actually at the moment are self-referrals, and that's definitely increased since COVID. We've seen lots more people being more open to support around their kind of family challenges. And second to that, we get health visitors are our second biggest referrers. But we get referred in by all sorts of different agencies. So, we've had one recently from the British Red Cross, which we hadn't had before. And I think now we've moved out to the west of the island as well. Lots of the schools around there are now referring in and things. Okay. So yeah, so we've got a huge range of referrers that refer into Brighter Futures.
Thank you. And so you mentioned self-referrals. So when people self-refer to you, well, like how are they finding out that you exist?
So I think a big boom within Brighter Futures is definitely our perinatal pathway. So as Jude just said, we've got 26 perinatal clients at the moment, and we've actually been put in the pet pregnancy pack. So when they go to hospital, they're actually our Brighter Futures, Brighter Stalks program is actually in the packs. And they all use their antenatal appointment, so they can go to any antenatal appointments. They use that as an antenatal appointment to come to our Brighter Stalks program.
Oh, I see. So within the
Yes.
legislation, obviously people
Yes.
can go to antenatal appointments within their work time. So going to Brighter Futures is classed as one of those appointments. I
Yeah.
wasn't aware of that. That's really
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, and employees seem to have been really open to their colleagues obviously going to that as well. We don't think from our perinatal program, we don't feel that, because obviously we're talking about the legislation to our families a lot, and we don't feel that they know about the dads also getting the 10 hours as well. We don't think that is something actually on lots of the mums to be radar kind of thing. So that's something that we are speaking about a lot more. But yeah, lots of people use it either. And then if the employer isn't happy for them to use it as their antenatal, they'll often use it as like an early lunch break and
Okay,
come on
sure.
the morning, which is great.
So you mentioned dads. We have a section of questions on fathers later on.
Yeah,
So we will
okay.
come back to that. Do you-
Yeah, it can be quite a wide question, but and recognising that everyone has different and unique experiences. But what would you say are some of the main issues that face the families that you work with? Is it possible to kind of draw some themes out of?
as briefly as possible, if you can.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, sorry.
I suppose not having extended family here, Jersey can be quite lonely. Obviously, I'm from Scotland. You don't have your mum and your dad here, so I think sometimes, and especially now, there's lots of different people from different countries come over. So if your husband's out working and you've got your little one there, it can be quite lonely unless you have got the confidence to go out to different playgroups and things. And yeah, and if English again is not your first language, that can be quite daunting. So I think that, I mean, we get quite a few referrals from perinatal mental health too, from GPs, so there can be lots of different reasons that people come, but probably for me, I think a lot of people need support, people in the same position as you maybe. Sometimes it's quite nice to have that familiarity, isn't it, when everyone else is off with their children, whether you've left a full-time job, no one leaves with you, do they? Everyone else, so your colleagues are still in work, so for those people who are maybe not so lonely at work, it can be very lonely, I feel. Starting out being a mother on your own, and especially if you've not got family in Jersey.
We get a lot of referrals in as well for family relationships, really that kind of concern around, might be health visit, might be social worker, and referring in because they're the concerns around their kind of the attachment and bonding within the family relationship. And often it is because we talk about that kind of mum going out to work during the night and then coming back, and then dad walking out the door as mum's coming in, and that's happening a lot with lots of our families, and that kind of and that has an impact on the whole family well-being. So we often get referrals in. Sorry, that's not just one answer to your question. Sorry.
But I suppose it does shift as well. The reasons do shift.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously after COVID, it was very much well-being. It was like everybody was just like, right, got to get the whole well-being sort of, and that was the main sort of reason for referral. But I think more and more people are actually getting to know what we actually do as a charity as well. So, and if obviously when start to finish, so as people come in through the door, we literally say, okay, what would you like your, what was the main support that you're actually looking for? So it's a holistic package of support of, what do you want us to concentrate on? Is it the child and parent and child relationships, well-being or whatever? But often it can start in one area, but then as the journey progresses, things to start to unravel, and then we're going, okay then, right, we can concentrate on this bit now. And so it does swap and change, and I think we're not a quick fix. And I think that's why if they're with us up to 3 years, then it can change as it goes along, as life happens. Because,
So they might families might come to you for loneliness and not having extended family nearby, and then you might discover actually that there's mental health problems and attachment problems, and you can coordinate all of those needs. That it sounds like that, there's a lot that you're doing.
And the next question starts to relate to the changes that we have seen in the family-friendly changes to the employment law. And obviously we've had two lots of changes in 2018 and 2020. Has Brighter Futures had to, or how has it had to respond to those changes? Have you had to do anything differently because of the changes, or seen opportunities along the way where you can do things differently?
I think it's just updating and always having those conversations, I think, because actually the big thing is that lots of our families don't know their entitlement or what, and that is a conversation that we're having quite a lot. And I know Judith spoke about our connections with other agencies, and that's something that we're often doing, like going back, having those conversations, supporting them going back to work and things like that. So I think it's just ensuring they're aware really is kind of the Brighter Futures part of that, and how we can support with that, because often sometimes they're not aware of changes and things like that. So that's why we put out the surveys, or we put things on social media to make sure that everybody is aware of those changes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Brings us nicely on.
Okay.
Yes, I think so.
Thanks for that, Lauren. You just highlighted two issues there, which is those people who are in work and want to get back and don't know, what their rights and their entitlements are, but also those people who haven't entered the workspace at the moment. So you're saying that there's a difference, if you like, in people's understanding there. Can you just share with us when you talk to parents, do they actually talk to you about what they know and what they don't know, or is it something that you have to bring up as part of the conversation?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Did you want to? No.
It's more you had to bring it up because they didn't really have a clue what was
You
in
didn't
place,
realise.
really.
Yeah.
So it's just, you'd know what you know from like social security, but just snippets. Whereas if you went to Brighter Futures, they'll sit you down and explain everything fully to you
Yeah.
and know what you're entitled to, where you can go from here.
Yeah.
So it's more of a friendly environment as well. It's like a family away from home. 100%. Like obviously me being a leaver, I was there from my daughter being 18 months until she left at 3 to go to primary, so nursery. And then I had a couple of months with my younger one as well. So I'd love to go back. I'm glad that I can actually help support being a parent ambassador. So if people wanted to know questions, they could come willingly and just go, Sam, have you done this? Have you done that? And then if I'm not sure of the answer, then I can go back to my old key worker, like Louise, just say, Louise, one of your clients had come to me. Can you give me more information? And Louise is still happy enough to keep in contact with leavers as well as her current clients.
So is that like a peer support kind of model?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Like you feel like you're not the only person going through this. There's other people the same as you going through the same things, and it gives you like some hope that you're not on your own.
I think. Do you think that the majority of people that you support aren't aware of their entitlements?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, yeah.
And then when you hear or you support somebody through that journey, it's nice to, like Sam said, to then buddy up and say, look, this person's been through this process, this is their experience of it, what can you learn from it, and where can you go for support? So it's exactly that, the buddy system works really well.
Yeah. What do you think are the sort of negative impacts of people not knowing their benefits and their entitlements? What have you seen?
We've seen people living in poverty, because they're not unsure what they're entitled to, or what they can have and what they can't have. We see that on a regular basis. So I'm looking at one of our coordinators, because Louise would see it more in where she sits. But not realising what they are entitled to. We see lots of families struggling to afford food to put on the table and things like that. And I think that's
And I think it's
And
the
damaging
worry of going, the
families'
worry of
well-being.
going back. Sorry.
Marcel.
Sorry, and damaging families' well-being as well, not knowing everything. So.
Yeah,
I think
100%.
the worry of going back to work as well, it kind of put you off, wouldn't it? Really thinking like, can I go back to work? We were talking before, saying that, can I go back to work now that I'm a mum or a dad, because my child's going to be off every 6 weeks? What's going to happen then? Then they're off for the summer holidays. What's going to happen then? It's quite difficult to find a job that's term time. Not all jobs are term time, and it's talking about flexible working hours, but how flexible is it out there? It's not that flexible.
It's not that flexible.
I
Did you want to add something?
I just wanted to add that I think from my experience of working at Brighter Futures and being an ambassador is that life can be pretty acute there. So you might just get someone coming in through the front door, and we have to make sure we've got some co-op vouchers. We have the larder that is essentially our food bank, and we'll try and relieve that immediate need. And quite honestly, that shame, I think that a big emotion can be isolation. Number two, shame that you're supposed to be a provider and perhaps you don't feel you can be. And the way that we have tried to respond to that, just because it's going to be topical with summer holidays coming up, is I think we're going into our 3rd year of Breakfast Club now. And that's something that Laura, Margaret and the coordinators, we were realising over summer holidays that families were actually falling more into isolation. And I don't know if they'd just give you a couple of minutes about the Breakfast Club. We do have a supporter for that, but we want to, it's basically we try and give in. Families are welcomed into it. We make it into a club. It's Ruthie Raccoon's Breakfast Club. Everyone gets a T-shirt and you can have a healthy start to your day, but more importantly, you get company, you get play space, you can make some food up for later as well. And so I would say that there's an education piece in there, because we're also doing something we're trying to do around nutrition, we're trying to do around everyone having a nice start to the day, but underpinning it is that absolute economic necessity. And as I say, I think it's our 3rd year now, and I just wanted to talk about Breakfast Club because that's going to be big for 6 weeks.
Thank you for that.
Just that's really important in terms of making sure that the legislative framework actually has some real impact, isn't it, really? So that's a really good example. One of the things that I just wanted to understand is your role, particularly as a coordinator, Louise. When you're talking to parents, are there any things that you think that employers could do better? So one of the things that we're looking to just establish is whether or not people actually get information or advice about their rights and entitlements, and what's your view about those that don't?
I think, again, it depends on the employer. Like we were having this conversation before. I think there's some people on the island that do it really well, and some people that maybe don't do it as well. I know people that kind of work in hospitality as well. That's quite a difficult area. Self-employment as well, that's a difficult area. If you've got a client who is self-employed and she has to go back to work, or we've noticed that we'll go back almost immediately sometimes after having baby, because there's no other option. Where you get
Can I just to ask you a little bit extra on that? So this urgency to go back, do you think that's driven through people's own necessity to do that, or is that anything to do with the fact that employers might be saying, or might not be saying to people what entitlements and benefits they are able to access?
Again, it depends on what your HR is and where you work. I think some places are really great, HR is really good, and they sit them down and talk to them about what they're entitled to, how that's going to work for them, what that's going to look like, but not everybody has that luxury of having people that are there looking out for them, and they have to do it themselves. I think people who work in shops and food places, they've kind of got it quite well. That you can go back on phased return. You can take a year off if you want to. There's some really good success stories there from people who are working in that industry. But again, you get the gap for people who are doing it really well, and then the mums who's been off for 3 weeks and has to go back to work because she's self-employed and financially she can't manage.
So there's an issue for self-employed people. Are there any other industry areas you think are not doing as well as perhaps some of the other industry areas?
I think hospitality is one of them. I've heard of a few things that come back, because obviously we do story catchers and whatever, where the mum and dad, he's had to change his role because the child care was too expensive for them because they're both in hospitality. So he's actually changed his job. He's left his current place and he's gone into a different area where he works evenings only. So they're doing tag team. So mum would work during the day. She's works in hospitality. So she'll work during the day and then come back, tag, and off he goes, and then they'll both come back. So they do. So he works 6 days a week. She works Monday to Friday, 9 till 5, and they have a Sunday together. But sometimes he has to work a Sunday as well. So it's not ideal.
But that's also with a self-employment. I mean, my missus, she's a self-employer, and we had to cut off maternity holidays just to ensure that the income is still there. So we had no idea that we had so many. We can have so many benefits. So the information we understand that it's there, but we don't have all the access.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just want to clarify one of the answers. So you mentioned that there are islanders living in poverty because they don't understand there are things they're entitled to. So this on the 2020, the 6 weeks paid plus there's 18 weeks of social security payments. So are there islanders who aren't accessing those and aren't receiving those just because they're not aware of it?
So we did a piece recently around kind of families living in poverty for the Decent Standing Living panel that's obviously part of the Best Start Partnership. And part of that was collating some evidence around families in Jersey, and particularly families that are accessing Brighter Futures that are living in poverty. And because obviously we've got stories of families asking for honey to put on rice because they're living off rice and things like that, because obviously they are living in poverty. And we did have one mum that we did that was pregnant, and she wasn't aware of anything that she was basically entitled to. Now, whether or not there was that language barrier there, however, even things down like the vouchers for fruit and things like that, her benefits of things like that, and all these things that we had to support her with. So it was okay in the end, but we were having to signpost her and support her with that. We do. We do see on a regular basis. Part of that is us actually because we're not also experts on this, so that isn't our, we're the experts supporting the family the best way we can. So that's why, people like Louise, we actually physically take our families, sorry, don't mean take, that sounds awful, we don't, in a nice way, we take our families down to speak to those experts to get exactly what they are entitled to, and often they were absolutely not aware of what they could be getting.
Really serious impacts of not knowing that these laws exist.
Thank you. Can I just ask a follow-up question to that? Do you think, in terms of the pathway arrangements now that you've got in place, that you will start to see less and less of that?
We hope so with the perinatal pathway. So I think because we're getting families in at point of, 13, 14 weeks of being pregnant, we're having those conversations all the time. But actually, it's a big worry that comes up. I wish we had our perinatal lead, actually, because this is very much her kind of bag. But it's a big concern for lots of pregnant mums in Jersey about the access to funds. And how am I going to be able to put a child in nursery? How am I going to be able to feed the family? It's a huge talking point. And actually, it's a big point that our perinatal lead discusses in one-to-ones all the time. And that's a big job that she does. She takes families down to make sure that they are getting what they're entitled to, because even a couple £100 a month is huge for some families. That's their food for that month. And so that's definitely something that we hope that we see a lot less of, having these conversations early and catching families at that that early point. And it is, and we're in a really lucky position where actually lots of our families do share their financial difficulties. And I think going back on what Sarah said, where sometimes there is that kind of shame associated with it, but actually we're in a really privileged position where our families often do share, their financial hardships and things with us. And that's why we're able to be able to support them and signpost them, and we're best placed to do that.
I think it's just expensive in Jersey.
Yes.
Everything's expensive, that's it, isn't
I
it?
also just think, if I don't mind me finishing off on that point, is that a lot of the families we deal with who, for example, might be involved in child protection matters, they're very cautious of what they see as another arm of government. They sometimes there hasn't always been that positive relationship because of interactions with the family, and that feeling of cautiousness and fear and can extend to other elements. So I think we might have got that as a barrier. I've seen that maybe
It's
on
great
a
to
few
hear the
occasions.
family feeling that that's, I think that's a real strength of your charity, isn't it?
Thank you.
Is it fair, just to pick up on what you said about people being self-employed, is it fair to say that you'd describe those who are self-employed as having, is it a barrier to them accessing their maternity or parental leave rights, do you feel? Yeah.
So shall I just state what could we get the slide back up? So if you're self-employed, you don't get that. Obviously, if you're with an employer, you get your 6 weeks full pay. But if you're self-employed, you don't get that. You just get the 18 weeks. So
and that's dependent on your social security contributions as well, your entitlement. So I wonder, do you come across people who do have gaps in contributions as well, which means they're entitled to less? Is that something you've seen along the way?
Yes.
Yeah, we do.
With my missus. So we had our daughter. Our daughter, will be 3 in September, and last year we stopped paying. She stopped paying contributions. It's just because it was either 640 quid or nothing. Unfortunately, we couldn't afford that. So now we're having the second child. We've been told that she's not entitled to any sort of paternity. So then I have to cover that.
Yeah.
So that was one of the.
Do you mind me asking, do you feel like you had all the information, you knew that would be the case?
Yes, so we've been informed that we might lose some allowances, for example, pension. I'll be very honest, I don't know if it was mentioned maternity, but this is what happened. So we knew about pension, 100% we knew about pension, but not necessarily maternity. No problem.
We appreciate your input as well. Yeah.
What kind of impact does that have, either in your situation or if you could speak for any of your clients, or if you wanted to speak? I don't know if you have.
I think I can cover most of the
self-employed.
stories that we have here, because although I've been only 1 year with Brighter Futures, I've been in so many situations. So, for example, English is not my first language. Close family, I don't have any close family here in Jersey. So for the first time, we had to bring my mother-in-law here when we had our daughter. So my mother-in-law, she was here for almost a year. Without her, we couldn't actually sustain 2023, 2024 and going forward. So yeah, there was a huge impact. My previous job, I actually preferred to be on paternity and my missus to do her full-time job, because at that time she was earning way more than me. Now with both children, we are really struggling as a full-time nursery. It's 1,750 quid a full-time nursery. So for both children now going both in September, just because my daughter misses for 8 days, misses the cutoff.
Is that 1,700? Is that for 2 children?
For one.
For one child. Wow.
So our expenses from September goes almost £8,000 per month. 2 nurseries, rent 1,800 plus at least £2,000 utilities and providing the food and essentials in the family.
Thank you for
So
sharing.
luckily enough, I have a very good job and not very good job, but a decent job at the Brighter Futures. So yeah, but other than that, it's going to be, and I'll have to take. I spoke with our CEO, and I'll have to take a part-time job on Fridays and Saturdays, hopefully. So.
We actually, I don't know if it's a good time. We are having more increased conversations with our families about the fact that actually they've got one child and actually they wouldn't be able to have 2 or 3. And their conversations we have quite regularly. Actually whether they carry on with pregnancies and things like that. And that's something that we're seeing a lot more of now than we have done before. Just because of the cost, and that's a lot of families' conversations around. You see even you even see it in the baby group and things. It's almost like a talking point now. Like, how are they sleeping? Would you be able to have another one? Things like that. So, which I don't feel like we saw as much of before. So
families are wanting to have more children, but they're telling you that they feel they can't.
Yeah, I think so, and that's. I would say, correct me if I'm wrong, Louise, that is predominantly actually families that aren't receiving any kind of income support or any benefits. That's more families that potentially would own their own property and things like that, and they would really that would be a really, really big financial implication, having another child. So lots of families having one child.
Or being in a situation where they've had to think about whether they continue with their second pregnancy because of the financial situation that they're in, and that's a homeowner who has a job and husband is working. That's not somebody who's accessing income support, that's somebody who is working really hard and still couldn't consider having another child because of the financial implications.
What kind of impact does that have on that individual when they want to have that baby and they feel they have to have a termination because they can't afford to have the child? What kind of impact does that have?
Because it's over £3,000 a month just for a nursery space for 2 children. It's a lot of money if you're a homeowner and you have your mortgage to pay and your other outgoings as well. And your job isn't a top high job, it's just getting you by.
I suppose what you're describing is short-term impacts in terms of trying to manage from one day to the next. But you've just talked about termination of pregnancy there, and that's a really critical decision for most people to make. So there are longer-term impacts as well. Do you feel that there are people who just cannot get their head above the water around some of the conditions of employment, or how this legislation perhaps isn't working for them?
I think that we deal with a huge cross-section of people at Brighter Futures, but inevitably a lot of our clients are very vulnerable. And I know that we are approached, especially as a charity, to help with those vulnerabilities, for example, the higher level need families. And I think another thing that we see a lot of, I know that there are parents who are not eating so their children can eat from working at Brighter Futures. It's not an urban myth. We know that from the bags of food that we give away. We know that from the fact that our larder can be empty as well. So, and we know that, Margaret is very good at spinning out the voucher. But we only have a finite amount of vouchers, but we want to give our clients vouchers so that there's the dignity of choice, and in the supermarket, like we'd all want. But it's certainly it's not. I don't want to keep coming back to hardship and poverty, but I feel it is, and I feel that when something happens to someone in Jersey, because of that infinite cost of living, it becomes a cluster of, and luckily with Brighter Futures doing this work and other charities, we can buoy people up. But there are some very concerning things that we know happen or don't happen. People can't look after themselves because of other costs, and that will have an impact.
Okay, thank you. We might come back to some of these themes. Some of that is quite devastating to hear, actually, and I can only apologise, actually, to the people that you support that there are situations like that occurring. I'd like to ask about fathers and whether there are different experiences that perhaps mothers and fathers are having. Would you like to start, Sal?
Yeah, so and for quite a few years now, we have our Dads Club, which is every Sunday of the month. And lately, I joined just to get the experience and to understand exactly. I joined most of the programs throughout the year now, just for me to understand how Brighter Future works and for me to make sure that we have enough fundraising. And yes, paternity leave it's a hot topic between that as well, and not all of them they have access to the full information. First, language barrier, not having families close, and not having somebody appropriate to guide them, exactly like it happens with moms. Somebody take them, okay, we come with us, and then we'll make sure that somebody will explain you. And also maybe it's a little bit of manly proudness, being proud of a man, so
Well,
maybe
there's a
it's also-
stigma. Do you feel that fathers are maybe encouraged to not take that leave, or they feel like they can't because of the cultural ways that our culture views fathers?
Well, I haven't taken all the past, all the advices or anything. Or, for example, I had no idea that we can actually take 52 weeks of paternity leave until now when I've seen it on the screen.
Yeah.
I mean, this morning.
So for the record, it is completely equal, something that I campaigned for very hard myself, and I know that it's supported by the Assembly. And what I would like to see is mothers and fathers being able to access that. But the fathers that come to Brighter Futures, do you feel that they are aware of the fact that it's equal? We've just heard that you weren't aware, Marcel. Are all the fathers aware that it's...
So I think it's a bit like a hot topic, isn't it? Dad's club and things like that, and then discussing it. And it's almost like them learning from, I think, each other and what each other do and things like that, rather than them maybe being shared that by their employer. I would suggest that's what we can see in the Dad's club.
Yeah.
And I think it is who, I was speaking to a dad recently, and he said that his employer was really, really good, and sat down and goes, it could look like this, and it could look like that, and it could look like that, which is great, because that's what you want, and you want that choice, don't you? You want those options. But obviously that's just being from one employer. I think it's almost talking to each other and seeing what friends do and things like that. But that's if you do have that social network, I suppose, rather than just always, I suppose, learning what they can do from their employer.
Yeah, and in terms of employers, are there any differences in how employers are treating dads and mums that anybody has observed?
I think we've got quite a lot of clients that mum and dad both work in kind of some of the like food retail, like food shops and things in Jersey, and they seem to be really, really happy with their responses from their employers. I think really like kind of helpful that they've got maybe mum and dad both working and being able to support them. So that's something that I would share, is that we do have some really nice kind of experiences from some of our families in those areas, in particular. But
it's good to hear positive.
I think they do, and they seem to be really happy with how they're their work. We've got a mum at the moment as well that her little one's starting school, and she's moving to be closer to a food trip to be close where her little one starts school and things like that. So I think they seem to be quite flexible and get back. So I think that was another point that comes out with our families, is when they approach about changing their out, when they're maybe going back after maternity leave and requesting kind of some flexible working hours. I think it's not always timely, and I think that causes quite a lot of strain and pressure on a family, because actually they're not always told in quite a timely manner. So it's almost trying to organise nursery, organise childcare and things around actually the unknown. So I think that's definitely something that's come out, a bit of a theme as well with families that are doing those requests, that actually it's not coming back to them in a timely manner for them to be able to I suppose get their ducks in.
And final one on this, the dad section. What do you think we could do to encourage more dads to feel that they can use the leave and to actually access greater periods of leave? Anybody?
I suppose break down stigma. I suppose that would be the biggest thing. I think different industries, just going from the reporting side of things, it's the different industries have got different sort of stigmas, if you know what I mean. So depending on, who's around them, if you've got a male workforce, then it's going to be different to, a mixed sort of workforce, I think. And I think that's just down to knowledge as well.
Yeah.
And I think, having a father that hasn't got a connection with the child, I think that's a huge thing, and that's not good as well. And that well-being sort of thing, you can see fathers that just don't get that connection with the child because they just haven't had that time, but they're very scared as well of how do I connect, so
That brings us nicely on to next question, 11.
Yes, so since the amount of paid parental leave has been increased, have you seen changes in the outcomes in terms of the child development amongst the cohort that you see at Brighter Futures, and also their bonding and attachment with their own parents?
Margaret? I don't know if we have from that perspective, but I think, like as Marcel said, because we have got quite a few dads, haven't we? Whether they're on paternity leave?
I'm not sure.
That's
This
had
is
the
not-
2 weeks, so it was increased to 2 weeks for fathers and then 6 weeks. So it was quite a rapid increase, wasn't it? A threefold
I mean,
increase.
from experience, you can see, we notice and we have cases that, for example, my niece, when she was 6-7 years old, she only knew that her father, because brings on the money in, so that's why they can leave. But then now with the increase of 32 weeks, we can see that father are more. I'll take another 2 weeks. I'll take another 4 weeks or 6 weeks, or I prefer to stay. I prefer to change hospitality to a different career in order for me to stay with my children. So just to make sure that I'm there for my daughter. As I've seen in the past, that wasn't a possibility, and I could see men taking not only the full-time job, but then having 2-3 other part-time jobs, just to make sure that they can provide for the families.
Have you? Sorry, go on.
No, I think to answer your question, I don't know whether we would particularly know whether families are taking longer off, I suppose. But obviously for us, our numbers keep increasing, so maybe that is like a telltale sign that people are using, their full allowance. And I think we can only see a massive part of what we do is based around those family, child and parent interactions and attachment, and we know that catching that early and having those bonds early, obviously is lifelong for those children. So that's obviously a huge part of what Brighter Futures do. So I can't answer whether or not we've seen a huge increase in that, but obviously that's something Brighter Futures obviously support families with every day on that kind of parent and child attachment, and then the child development comes and things, because we're encouraging that reading and we're encouraging that social interaction and things at a young age.
I'm just going to do a time check. So we've got about just over 10 minutes left, so we might need to edit some of our questions and maybe make the answers a little bit briefer. It's all really interesting what you're saying to us. But, please continue.
So you've clearly expressed today that many people don't know what their statutory parental leave rights are, but is there any view that you have formed perhaps as an organisation as to what the ideal amount of time for statutory parental leave would be?
So that would be the paid amount of leave, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's
We were
different.
talking-
We have got,
We were talking about it before, and we were saying
Yeah.
that, I mean, for me, I feel that to be a family-friendly island, it would be better if it was longer. I think families should be allowed to be families. I feel that having a baby and going to work, I'm not for anyone, for 6 weeks, it's tiny. If you're breastfeeding this little one, it's going to shorten that breastfeeding unless you express and things like that. But I just feel that a baby is so tiny, and those first 3 years of a little one's life are so important. And if families can and want to do it, I think it would be nice to have that opportunity to do it. I feel that it would just make it more a family-friendly island. I think the cost probably may put people off from taking it, because I think a lot of people may rush back to work because of the cost in Jersey, whether it be a mortgage or rent or whatever. And I think maybe both parents don't take the time off again because of the cost. And so although it's great having that time, I don't know whether, I don't really know any families that I know that have taken all of that time off together, and it would be lovely to be able to do it, but I wouldn't know anyone that's done it.
I'll pass back to you, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, so even though there is, in theory, 2 years shared between the parents, actually not many families are accessing that.
I don't know of any. I wouldn't know that a lot of people would take it off, and I think the cost of living in Jersey is
And I would say
probably
that you need to
restricts
know,
people
yeah,
from taking it.
like you've got the option, but
Yeah.
then still you have to weigh up everything else that you have outgoing, like your rent, your mortgage, food, and then a nursery, and to weigh it up, either one of you are going to stay at home. And then what happens after that? Like what happens after those 52 weeks? Because children grow, and they need you for longer than that. So then what happens? Does one of you just stay at home forever? You know, until that child goes to school, or you know, and you look and you think how expensive nurseries are. You know, and after school clubs are just as expensive. You know, private nanny care is just as expensive. So what do? Do you give up your career as a father or a mother, you know, to then raise your children, or do you bite the bullet to pay out? And that's the tough part. It doesn't just stop at 52 weeks. You know, it carries on. It carries on. It doesn't just stop at nursery. It carries on as the children go older. Summer holidays, you know, and we go back to talk about breakfast clubs, you know, like, and we go back to talk about Brighter Futures, and then also anxiety. You know, I came to Brighter Futures as a mum, you know, navigating a second pregnancy, you know, and the anxiety I had was crippling, you know, and I navigated it in my first pregnancy, and it was the place saved me, you know, it really did. And still now, like, we go weekly, you know, and we look forward to it, and the classes are small, you know, and we meet so many different people, and I couldn't imagine leaving, you know, when the time comes. But, you know, and everything is expensive, but you have to think whether you go back or whether you don't have a career.
Can I just explore some more of that with you? So the amount of paid leave is 6 weeks at the moment. So what you're saying is you don't think that support basically supports families' living costs in Jersey?
No, not at all.
No,
The 6 weeks
definitely
is still seen as an income by Social Security.
Yeah.
So that income that you're getting for those 6 weeks probably doesn't even cover your rent, especially if you're not like lucky enough to be a Jersey resident and able to get that extra support, like other people, families that come into Brighter Futures, they rely on working to cover their rent and stuff like that.
So do you think that the 52 weeks of leave that is given for parents,
Don't think people will take it.
but six weeks of that is paid at 100% by the employer. So what you're saying is that that's actually not helpful in terms of the way that's organised. But the thing is that you can take sort of that leave in blocks. Do you think that's working for people at all?
It depends on the family, doesn't it? Every family have got a different situation.
Okay.
And I think as great as it is, you know, like we hear it in groups, we hear it as Marcel's just saying, people are out there going to get second jobs. You know, people are looking, you know, for weekend work, you know, because the money they're bringing in monthly is just not meeting their needs.
So in terms of the parental allowance, which is £283 and a penny,
That's per week.
that's per week for a maximum of 32 weeks. Again, you don't think that is sufficient to
Depends how
maintain
many
some of the living
children you've
costs?
To put it in a perspective, so for 4 weeks, that's over £1,200 Talking from my point of view, our rent is £1,800. If my missus will be in maternity, we will lose at least $3.5 grand per month just for her to be in maternity. So we wouldn't afford to pay the rent. We paid the nursery for our daughter, but we couldn't afford to pay the rent. So.
And the tax-free parental grant, do you know, do people access that? Do they, because that's a tax-free payment as well.
I accessed that, yeah. And I
people
have
do.
to say it was
They
very, very positive, you know, it was brilliant. And, you know, when we talk about, you know, the 52 weeks, and it was great, you know, I have a very good job, you know, but when I went on maternity leave, I was losing the extra payments that I'd be getting for working at the weekend, for working at night time, you know, and so you have to go back, you know,
So
it was
it's
a
the
shift
difference. It's
absolutely,
the difference in
because
the
there's
pay.
nobody picking up that shortfall, you know.
Are you aware of any?
£800? Is that what? Sorry, yes, all our families do. Yeah, we do encourage all our families.
Do you mind me just digging into that slightly as well? How do you find people spend that payment? Because the payment traditionally, you still get, it was your pram money, but for example, you still get charged at a GP, you get charged something like £120 for your care in pregnancy, and then when you question it, they say, oh, well, you get your £800 payment, so that helps to cover that. Do you feel like people are using it to buy prams and cover those payments, or is it to keep heads above water.
I think we
effectively.
do try and we're very lucky at Bright Future that we get a lot of donations. So something when our pregnant mums come in, or any client comes in, we always have conversation around if they're in financial hardship. And actually, often prams is something that we do try and get for them. So we often get donated and things like that, and we get approached by the public for their prams. And Baby Basics obviously is a huge, has been a massive support for pregnant mums. But prams is definitely something that, you know, and someone will use it, and we often get them back from clients as well, which is really lovely. So I wouldn't say so much that it's getting used for prams. I wouldn't know what it is, getting used for, but I imagine just daily living, you know, yeah.
Can I just come back to the issue about how people access support? Are you aware of any families that are accessing income support to help them take longer periods away from work to care for a child?
Over the 52 weeks?
Yes.
So families maybe who weren't accessing income support but then might need to once they have a child.
Yeah.
I've
Lots
been
of
on income
families,
support since I had my second. I didn't have the choice to go back to work because I worked for a UK company and they wouldn't support me to go back part-time.
To go back. So the conditions of work wouldn't allow you to
There
go back.
wasn't a place back for me after I left work, so I worked up to 2 weeks due. 2 weeks due with Lily, and then obviously I was going to go back when she went to nursery, but I fell pregnant again, and I haven't been back to work since.
Okay. Do you think there are any families experiencing financial hardship because of the level of paid leave available to them?
Do you think we probably covered that? I think we've established that
You think there is?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
can I just come in with I wanted to reflect back on this line of questioning that Karen's got around the finances, and somebody mentioned maybe families who are paying a mortgage, and sometimes we call that kind of middle Jersey, and they wouldn't be able to access income support if they had a mortgage. So do you see any differences in the hardship experienced by those kinds of families?
I think we saw. I think this so Christmas was a big time where we noticed it a lot more, didn't we? With clients that potentially like dads working, and mums off work and on maternity, and they own their own home, and they were the ones that actually couldn't afford Christmas. You know, they were the families that were really struggling over Christmas. So lots of our families do struggle, during Christmas time, but we saw a real big increase this year actually, and maybe we noted it this year, was that lots of the families that are, that aren't entitled to income support presented to ones that were really struggling over Christmas time, the ones that potentially weren't going to be having, the Christmas dinner and the traditional Christmas dinner and things like that because of the cost of it, and we were supporting them with presents for their little ones and things like that over Christmas time. I think the challenges are similar really, but I think we have seen a big increase in families struggling with that.
Thank you. We're going to have to triage our questions a bit because we've only got 3 minutes left. Lucy, do you want to?
I mean, I think we did cover child development, and I think it was quite a clear message that it's, the leave and the time for bonding for both parents is really important. Is that a fair summary of what was said earlier?
Yeah.
And the other thing I see would be, do you see it also in similar terms for parents' mental health and stress levels
100%.
as well? And if they've got that space to take the leave, do you think that's a positive?
I think
thing
so,
as
and
well?
be with other I'm going to say mothers or fathers. I just feel as if it would feel more comfortable if you were able to be off with other people, and like my little one's crying, or my little one, just to get that. Especially being a first time mum or a first time dad, it's quite daunting, and especially with no other people around. It's just it's nice to know that everyone's baby cries, and a bit, the little milestones that you're there for, and I feel that the opportunity to be able to be off with your little ones is really, really important. Yeah, massively.
And would you say that the navigating the employment law and what may or may not be in it and worrying about it, is that a source of stress for the families that you see, do you think?
I think sometimes you can look at a piece of paper and just see a load of words, and it's very, very daunting, just trailing your way through all the information to try and get the bit that you actually want. And I think, you know, that's why Brighter Futures works as well, is because people can come and then find and literally ask the question and get the answer, rather than going, I can't even look at that. I can't even, all of that information. It's just too much.
Can I pick up on that? If other services were able to do that kind of explaining part for you, would that free you up to do some of the more in-depth work that you do, the supporting work? If like the communicating part of it was covered more adequately, would that free you up?
I just think we've got that relationship with, I think we've got that relationship with families. I don't know whether it's, I think they share things with us, and they might share things with other agencies. We don't know, but I think, and like I said before, we're in a really good position where they do open up and they do share things, and they do express their worries and what's going well and not well and things like that. So I think I wouldn't have thought so, because I don't know if they would. I don't know. They share with us, and I think that's really positive.
There's more trust with Brighter Futures. 100% more trust. Before I went to Brighter Futures, I was under social services. Now, what I had with social services, I wouldn't want that again, and I wouldn't like to see any other family go through it. But what I had with Brighter Futures was completely different.
Yeah, so people prefer to go straight to Brighter Futures.
100%. It was more opening. You had trust there. You know that you were going to get looked after. Your child was going to get looked after. You weren't feeling like you put one foot wrong, your child was going to get taken away from you.
And I think it's exactly that, Sam. It's we're a trusted advisor, aren't we? And you know, if you come to us for something, you're going to want to come to us for another. And thank you for sharing that. And it's something we do see. Thank you.
And I think it's talking
just to
through.
add to that, we start a process. So we open ourselves up to like our care coordinator in a very vulnerable time of ourselves, you know, and we grow that. You know, and we grow together. Like we go to a group called Grow Together, and it literally is we grow together, because the process that we start is not the process where we end up. You know, we end up with such a better place than we ever were originally.
Thank you. So we're very near to the end of our time, so we're going to jump to the end section. And basically what I'd like to understand is, what final kind of improvements would you like to suggest to us? And I want to ask about two specific areas, and then you can also tell us in a more general sense any improvements. So if you could reflect very briefly on grandparents, because I know that your charity sometimes supports grandparents, and anything that could be improved to allow to support grandparents in the care that they're providing for your very young children. And also single parents, how things can be improved for them, and then any general comments. So we'll start very briefly with grandparents. Does anyone want to comment on how services could be improved?
I think it's all agencies being aware and having those conversations, isn't it? Because I don't think lots of our grandmas, they didn't know about us, for example. So do they know about that? I don't know.
Sorry, I think I need to just refocus my question. Okay, so specifically the legislation.
Right. Okay.
Is there would you change anything in this law to make it better for grandparents?
Right,
So would you make it more flexible? Would you put something in there specifically targeted at grandparents? Would you allow it to be shared with grandparents? Is there anything, you know, from what you've learnt about the grandparents you support, that you would change about this law?
Do you mean for like grandparents to be off work too?
Yes.
Maybe, you know, like, I'm going to say I don't have parents here, but if you mean like they could be paid to be off?
So that's the care that we give to families it's basically the main carer. It's the main parent carer, and I think that's maybe how you could actually change it. So instead of actually saying that it's a mum or a dad or a surrogate, maybe it should be the main carer. So you're circling it around. So whether it's grandparents, it's the main carer. So we get some families which, you know, the grandparents actually take care of the children because, you know, their child can't actually physically look after them. So, you know, I suppose that's where, it could change.
I think they should be able to access some protected. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's okay. So you think grandparents should be able to maybe access some of this protected time so they
I think
could
if they're
take
the
leave
main
and go
carer,
back to
yeah,
their job.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we had a
that is the
conversation,
case, yeah.
someone said recently about like kind of village raising the child and they don't feel like that's so happening as much now. And you know, and someone said like obviously it's because their parents are having to work, you know, till they're a lot older, so they're not able to be off and to be able to support that. And actually, you know, those grandparent to child related is so important for that whole family, you know, and I suppose that attachment and that bond from such a young age. So I think you know, so I'm just speaking for myself, but I think, you know, and speaking, you know, and hearing from, you know, that was a conversation recently we had with family. So I think, you know, if that could be shared between, grandparents, aunties, uncle, whoever it could be,
And the single parents as well, definitely.
Yeah. If you have any brief comment about single parents and how this could be improved for single parents.
Well, I suppose they're just juggling on their own, aren't they? You know, and I think, you know, I think possibly even more so because, you know, they can't rely on somebody else to actually, you know, go along the journey with them. So yeah, I mean,
yeah.
yeah,
And
how
sometimes
you
I
do
think
that.
for single parents, they would be over the bracket of receiving income support. So that's really, really difficult. One person working on their own to work, to pay a nursery, it's just, it's quite impossible. You know, you end up with nothing. You're paying rent, especially if you've only come over to the island, you're paying rent, you're paying a nursery, and you're trying to juggle work. It's just, there's nothing left, you know, at all.
Often leaving the island because of it.
So people are leaving.
Yeah,
because the
yeah,
law isn't.
they have to go back to their home place, so they've actually got the family which is surrounding them because they can't physically stay here.
And that's
Which is a real
something
shame.
we measure as well in our annual report, isn't it, Jude, about we do measure that if a client doesn't finish their journey with us, often a reason for that is that they took that economic decision, and we record it because it is something that is coming through to us as a piece of evidence.
I think obviously just thinking about single dads as well, you know, because we work on single dads. I think it's almost like the kind of community society thing of, you know, you go into a restroom and often the baby changing mats are in the women's toilets and things like that. So I think often, I know you said about, you know, the stigma kind of thing, but actually, you know, often there's not a baby changing area, maybe in a male's toilet and things like that. So it's almost that society feel actually that, well, it should be my wife that's off because there's the baby changing area or whatever. So I think it's almost a kind of, like kind of whole community shift, isn't it, I suppose?
Okay, thank you. Are there any final improvements that maybe you haven't had time to suggest? Maybe in quick 30 seconds, quick fire round if anybody wants to.
One thing I was going to say is that
to this specifically to this legislation.
I suppose, you know, going back to sort of knowing what you're actually entitled to, and the reason why Brighter Future works is obviously you've got that one-to-one key worker support, and it's not chatbot. It's actually a person,
And a conversation.
and it's having a conversation, and it's actually getting an answer back, not getting the answer that has absolutely no relevance to it. You know, I think they've got a place, chatbot, but possibly not when you're looking for
So more face-to-face support with understanding that. Thank you.
And sometimes even more plain and simple wording instead of giving a complex of this is the law and such. Yes, we can do it, or no, we can do it. Will help way more than.
Thank you. Yeah, Samantha, what would you change about this
Obviously,
law?
more personal experience with that, like we get from Bright Futures.
Okay, so
One-to-one personal experience.
so more support with this time of life. Yeah, Kerry, is there anything you would change about this law about the parental leave? Or
So I think that just like not everybody fits the one box, you know, like think outside of the box because, you know, one story isn't the same. We're not all the same. You know, my struggles are going to be different to Sam's struggles, you know. Everything changes. The struggle that I've got this week might not be the struggle I've got in 6 months' time.
that's very powerful. Thank you.
I'm just thinking, is there this piece that goes in the maternity packs? about kind of what you're entitled to, like you can go to all your antenatal appointments. your
We
partner
can
get
certainly check that when we question the minister. We can ask the minister.
Because I think
that.
predominantly the people that are that know of that they can go to all these are government workers. So obviously they're shared that and they're told that. So actually,
Yeah.
I think if I was pregnant and read it that my
Put it in the
partner can get
packs.
10 hours and things like that, I think
Yeah.
you're not always going to catch everybody that would read it. But I think that maybe might be a good.
Well,
place
I can
to start
support
as
that,
well.
Lauren.
Yeah.
We haven't seen anything, especially with the second one. We took every leaflet and we checked almost everything, and we haven't seen all the details.
We will
that are
follow
there,
up
so.
on that.
Yeah,
Thank
that'd be
you.
great.
Yeah, thank you, Margaret. What would you like to change about this law?
I think maybe more than 6 weeks, because I really think that
Be bold, please.
yes. The 1001 critical days is so important.
Okay.
It's just the time when the little one's brain is developing, and I think they need the care of mum or dad or both. I just think we need to be a more family friendly place.
Thank you.
Again, for the just to nurture our little ones and to be with them and just to be a family. I just feel there's so many people, I think you said it, Lauren, where people are tag teaming. It's really is quite sad, and I think and I've went like I did do coordinator work. It's like, when do you see your husband? You know, like I've actually said that, and it just makes me feel so sad. I think it's a real difficult place to work. It's a lovely island, but I think it's really difficult for families and young people being off. Yeah.
Thank you. Louise, what would you change about this law?
I would say combining the existing support so that it's accessible to a wider support, the family's wider support network. I mean, I know I've definitely worked with a client who would benefit from how being allowed to share that parental leave with a parent.
Yeah.
Because she's got additional needs herself and hasn't been able to return back to work just after she's had a baby. So she's had to move in and live with her parents who have took over the responsibility of their children but don't get any kind of support with that.
Yeah.
So mum and dad have had to take time off their employment to support their daughter. So I would definitely like to see that grandparents are included in that as well.
Thank you. Final words.
I think for me it would just be that people have the knowledge and confidence about that right to request flexible working, and for people who need to ask that question not to feel vilified and to feel like that is a right that they have, and that should be reasonably considered by the employer. And I think that if you can get that piece of information out to more employees, whether they're parents, they've got other caring responsibilities, I think that would be a really helpful narrative. And may I just say thank you all for this opportunity on behalf of Brighter Futures.
Any final comments or questions from the panel? Yeah. Thank you. I'm sorry that we have gone over time, but we just had so many questions for you, and everything that you've said to us, every single sentence that has been uttered today is going to be so valuable for the review and will help to inform the recommendations that we make. And I just wanted to comment on something that came up once or twice, the feelings of loneliness that parents have. And I think you mentioned more than once feelings of shame. And I wanted just to emphasise how important it is and what an important job being a parent is to our island. Our birth rate is falling, which is one of the reasons that we've initiated this review. And we on this panel wouldn't want anybody to feel any shame, but actually to feel pride around being a parent and to being a parent in Jersey. And that's something that I would like to pass on to your charity and people that you're working with. So thank you very much for your time.